Hello all, I'm Sai and in today's video, I'm bringing to you my 2025 Book Bingo Reading Challenge. I have done the Book Bingo Reading Challenge in the past 2 years in 2022 and 2024. I will link my previous Bingo challenges in the description so you can go forward and check them out if you are interested. So this Bingo challenge is basically just about reading books across different categories and genres, and each and every prompt that I'm giving today is going to be kind of difficult to find. There will be one or two which are easier to find and read through, but most of these are going to take a little bit of effort from our end in order to get fulfilled. And I have only one rule as usual for this bingo challenge, and it is that you can cross off a maximum of 3 prompts using one book. So you will have to read at least 9 books by the end of the year to complete all the 25 prompts that I'm giving inside the card. I'm also going with a very warm theme for the bingo card this year, and this is how it looks. I have used cooler tones only in the past 2 years, and I wanted to give it a change this year, and this one also felt very much cozy, and I think this will go with all kinds of seasons. I'm sure that you saw at least a few prompts when you saw the bingo card itself, but now I'm just going to tell you guys all the 25 prompts, and if there are any clarification required for any particular prompt, I'll be saying that too right then and there. If you want recommendations from me for any of the prompts, you can definitely ask them to me in the comments below. I'll try to give you recommendations if I have any, and if you guys have any recommendations for any particular prompt inside the card, please feel free to leave that also in the comments because it can help me as well as anyone else who's also interested in doing the challenge. So without any further ado, let's get into the prompts right away. Starting with the prompts, I want to get some prompts out of the way because I have been using them for the past 3 times continuously. And of these, the first prompt is to read at least one standalone fantasy book. I have talked about a lot of standalone fantasy books in the channel already, and I also have a few recommendations videos specifically for standalone fantasy books alone. If I'm not wrong, I've made 3 such videos and I've talked about 30 different standalone fantasy books in those videos. I'll try to link them in the description. So if you want some recommendations for this particular prompt, you can get them from those videos. Prompt number 2 is to read a book on productivity. This is also a prompt which I have kept constant in the past 2 years too. I'm keeping this prompt very much intact and not changing it in any way because all of us can do a lot more with a little bit more time every day, and in order to find that extra time and do what we want to do, we have to learn how to create that time for ourselves and also try to consume less time for certain mundane things that we keep on doing each and every day. Productivity books have helped me so much to make the most of the time that I have, so I want you guys also to benefit from them. That's why this is a prompt. Prompt number 3 is to read a book on your country's history, and this must definitely be only a non-fiction book. You cannot read a historical fiction book that is happening in your country or based on your country's history and consider that for this prompt because I want you specifically to read a non-fiction book that has something to do with your nation's history. I know that there are so many historical books which talk about the struggles that my country India has faced. Personally, I have not read that much, to be very honest, so I want to push myself and learn more about my own country's history apart from the things which I learned just because of the academics. So this is definitely a prompt. So whichever country you're a part of, I want you to go forward and read a non-fiction book that talks about the history of that particular country. Prompt number 4 is to read a bookish book, and for this one there's a catch, which is it is not a bookish book only in the title. Last year I gave a prompt of read a book with a bookish title, but this one is different from that because the book or the story should have something to do with books. It can be fiction as well as non-fiction, it doesn't matter, but the book that you're reading should deal with books, and books should be a major part of the story, or they must be the main subject on which the author talks about. If you're a book lover, I'm sure that you will love this prompt, and when you read the book that you choose for yourself, it'll be a very different and calming experience. And if you're someone who's just getting started with reading, I'd also suggest you to go forward and try this prompt because it'll just make you understand how amazing books are and just get you into the addiction that we all are already caught in. Prompt number 5 is to read a psychology related book. This can be any book but in non-fiction again. I'm pushing a lot more non-fiction than the past few years this time because I can see that I'm not reading as many non-fiction as I used to before, and especially in the past year, I came across only a very few non-fiction books which resonated deeply with me. The fault also lies on my end because I did not explore much in non-fiction in 2024. I want to do that in 2025, and I hope you guys will be joining me in that journey because ever since I deeply started reading non-fiction books, my life completely changed, and that is definitely something which I want for you people also to happen because we all know books are powerful, and non-fiction books in specific can be much more powerful than fiction books when talking in a very practical way. So you need to read one psychology related book which is non-fiction. Prompt number 6 is going to be kind of a tricky one because it will be quite difficult to handle. and it is to read an International Booker Prize winner book. This can be an International Booker Prize winner from any year. I'm not talking about any recent releases or old things in specific. Any book that you are interested in that has won the International Booker Prize, you can go forward and read for this prompt. Prompt number 7 is to read a translated book from an Indian language. You cannot read an Indian book that is originally written in English here. You have to take up only an Indian language book that has been translated into English. And by Indian language, I mean any of our regional languages like Tamil, Malayalam, Telugu, Kannada, Tulu, Hindi, anything. We all know that there are so many translations of amazing Bengali books here in English. So the options are just limitless. Go forward and look for something. I'm sure that you will get something that interests you. Prompt number 8 is to read a book with a non-binary main character. I personally have not read any book with a non-binary main character until now, and just in order to push myself as well as other people who have not read such books, I wanted to include this as a prompt. Again, this can be a fiction as well as a non-fiction book. I'm not restricting it here because you can definitely go forward and read a non-binary person's memoir also, because they are the main character there. So if the main character is non-binary, it is great. You can just go forward and give it. Prompt number 9 is something similar to prompt number 6, which is to read a Booker Prize winner book. Again, this can be from any year. The difference between the International Booker Prize and the Booker Prize is that the International Booker Prize is the prize that is given to a book that is translated from some other language into English. Basically, it's a translated book for a particular year. And the Booker Prize is something that is given to a book that was originally published in English itself. Prompt number 10 is again something related to our country, and it is an Indian autobiography or biography. Again, I'm not restricting it to anyone here, okay? You can definitely go forward and read any kind of memoir or autobiography or biography. It just needs to be the story of a person's life. They need not be popular. They need not be known by hundreds and thousands of people. They can just be known by a very short or small circle of people, and you might want to know more about them. The only condition here is that they must be Indian. The author need not be Indian, okay? But the person who's the center of the book needs to be Indian. So keep that in mind when you're going to choose this prompt. It can be about actors. It can be about cricketers. It can be about any other famous personalities, politicians, literally anyone who's Indian. Moving on to prompt number 11, we have a very basic one, which is to read a classic. Again, here you can read a classic in both non-fiction as well as fiction. It doesn't matter. There are so many classic non-fiction books out there like The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, The Richest Man in Babylon, Think and Grow Rich, and so many other things. You can read any of those for non-fiction. They are all very short books. And when it comes to fiction, there are obviously hundreds of them already available. Just keep in mind that it needs to be a classic. It need not be fiction or non-fiction. It can be anything of your choice. Prompt number 12 is to read a book on art, any kind of art that you like. I'm not talking about art just in specific like painting or music or dance, anything like that. Anything that you consider art, you need to read a book on that particular type of art. It can be literally anything. It can be acting, it can be dance, it can be music. For example, I like painting so much, so it can be painting. Anything that feels artistic to you and makes you feel creative, you can definitely go forward and read a book on that. Prompt number 13 is to read an illustrated book. For this one, I'm not including graphic novels or comic books because they make the challenge a bit more easier to complete. I want to make it a little bit more tough. So you're going to read a full-length novel only, but it can have illustrations, okay? It can be half illustrations and half words, or it can be a maximum of words and little bit of illustrations here and there, or it can be an illustrated edition of a particular story that you like. If it has illustrations, that is, if the edition that you read has illustrations in it, it counts for this prompt. Prompt number 14 is to read a non-English book. This prompt is a bit tricky because I know that people in our country, India, can definitely go forward and read this because almost each and every one of us knows to read and write in more than one language, right? So it is practically easy for us people here in India because we have so many regional languages and so much literature in all the languages that we speak. But if you're from a place in the world where English is the only primary language and you don't speak anything else as a language or don't have knowledge of it, it doesn't matter. We can go forward and read a translated book for this one. That's like a different route that you can take. Again, I'd suggest you to go forward and pick something a bit more challenging for you. If you're used to reading Japanese translated books, for this prompt, don't choose that. Maybe go forward and read a translated book from German or a translated book from Russian or some other language which you've not tried before. But if you can't speak more than one language and if that language is not English, please go forward and read the book in that language because I know that BookTube is mostly about English books and people who know more than one language, we are kind of, not making the most use of it, including myself. So go forward and read a book that is not in English. Prompt number 15 is to read a mental health related book. Again, this is something which I have repeated in the past 2 bingo cards and I'm including it here because we all know that it matters a lot. Ever since the pandemic for the past 5 years only, we've been concentrating more on our mental health, and this mental health related book that you're reading for this prompt can be both fiction as well as non-fiction. Again, no restrictions here. It can be a fiction book which just represents a mental illness or a mental health condition properly, or you can directly go forward and read a non-fiction book to gain some perspective and knowledge about some kind of mental health issue or, just to be mentally healthier. Any book that has something to do with non-fiction will do really well for this prompt. For prompt number 16, we have a queer memoir, autobiography, or biography. Again, this can be any kind of queer person. Okay, they can be from any nation. It doesn't matter whether they are from your nation or not, whether you actually know that person by some means or not. It doesn't matter. If you find a queer memoir that you feel will be inspirational for you or will educate you in some way, just go forward and read it. This can be again in any form. It need not be a traditional book. It can be a comic book. It can be a graphic novel. There are a few out there in the world. For example, there is this graphic novel called Gender Queer, and it is amazing. I think I read it in 2022. It was amazing. And this year I have another one in my DBR, which is Homebody. That is again a graphic memoir. The story of the author is actually narrated by a graphic novel here. There are such recommendations out there. You can definitely go forward and choose anything that floats well with you. Prompt number 17 is to read a short story collection. And there's a small challenge inside this prompt too. And that is that the short story collection should have more than 10 stories. It should not have exactly 10 stories also. 11 and above is fine. But anything until 10 is not acceptable for this prompt. Prompt number 18 is to read a fantasy series published in India. I'm specifically saying fantasy series because we have a lot of romance series, thriller series, mystery series, and all other such things going on in our Indian publishing really well. But there aren't that many fantasy series, personally, if you ask me, which are not inspired from our Indian mythology. I wanted to try and find as specific fantasy books as possible that are published in India, written by Indian authors. I have a few in hand. I'll be trying to read them this year. Even if a mythological retelling sounds or feels like a fantasy, it is acceptable here. But I suggest you to go forward and try to find some kind of pure fantasy book in India, because that will be challenging to find. At the same time, it will be fun to do. So just give it a try. Prompt number 19. This is going to be quite kind of a tricky one because I think many people will get caught here, and it is a book that is at least 10 years older than you. For this one, most classics will count, but if you're going to read only one book per prompt, like I am going to do, this will be a little bit challenging to do because most of us are very much comfortable with reading books of our age. So it will be challenging to go forward and read books which are older than us. And by 10 years, it's almost like a generation gap nowadays, right? But it will be nice to go back and see how the world was before we were born in a very normal way. Try to read a book which is more contemporary and literary fiction than something which is, very fictitious like science fiction or fantasy, because then you'll not be able to get that exact kind of experience that books which deal with reality do. For prompt number 20, we have a book set in Asia. And by Asia, I mean any Asian country. I'm not specifically saying only certain specific Asian countries like India, China, Pakistan or anything. Any Asian country is fine. But I suggest you to, not straight away go to Japan, because there are a lot of translated books from Japan which we see. And, most of the translated books from Japan happen inside Japan, right? So it's easier to find books like that. Try to challenge yourself. Try to find something that happens in a country from where you've not read that many stories. It will just make the prompt a bit more difficult for you to achieve and also make the experience a bit more interesting. Prompt number 21 is something quite practical, and it is to read a personal finance book. Again, I have included this prompt in the past two challenges because it is a very practical prompt, and whether you end up enjoying the experience of reading a personal finance book or not, by the end of the book, you would have gained at least a little bit knowledge from the time spent while reading the book. Some great recommendations that I have for you guys are 13 Steps to Bloody Good Wealth by Ashwin Sanghi and Sunil Dalal, the book which I read last year, which is Let's Talk Money by Monica Hallen, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert T. Kiyosaki. There are so many books which are very popular also. All these books are very short, so you can easily sit down and read them. It doesn't take much effort. At the same time, they are very easy to understand. For prompt number 22, we have a poetry collection. Personally, I don't think I have read any poetry collection at all. I have read novels written in verse, but that doesn't count for this prompt. It must specifically be a poetry collection. Easily a go-to author will be Emily Dickinson. I have not read anything from her, but I know that she literally has hundreds of poems out there. Prompt number 23, a story, a book set in the 1900s. I know that for many people, even the 90s is like 1900s. It's not for me because I was born then. But anything in the 90s is fine, okay? It can start from 1900 to 1999. All those 100 years count. You can read any book from any of those 100 years. It needs to be from the 1900s. That's all that matters. Prompt number 24 is to read a banned book. This can be a book that is not banned in your region. It can be banned in some other region of the world also, and you can go forward and read it. I personally don't think I have read any banned books so far. So if a book is going to be banned for some reason, there must be something really good about the book, or something very, very interesting about it, whether it is good or bad. So let's just try and explore that. That's why I included this as a prompt. Finally, for prompt number 25, we have an activity rather than a book, and it is to annotate a book. Okay, I know that not many people are into annotating books, but I also know that many people want to start annotating books because when you see it online, it just looks super fun, right? I started annotating books with that desire only after seeing people talking about annotating their books on Instagram and YouTube. And when I started doing it for myself in my own way, it just became even more fun and so satisfactory for me. So just go forward, pick a very short book, which is like a novel of just 100 pages or so. Go on, highlight it, put some tabs in it, stick some sticky notes here and there, annotate it in any way that you like. And you can even pick up a book that you use for some other prompt and annotate it for this prompt, so that it will be two prompts with one book. Try annotating a book. It will not just be fun, but it also most probably retain a lot more from the book compared to when you don't annotate it. So yes guys, those are all the 25 prompts for this year's book bingo challenge. I hope you'll be joining me for the challenge, and the bingo card for this will be published in my community tab along with this video. So you can go forward and take a screenshot of the bingo card from there. Or if you want a higher quality of it, please do feel free to DM me on Instagram. I'll definitely send it to you over there. I'll also be updating my monthly progress of the bingo card on my Instagram stories each and every month. So if you're not following me on Instagram, do follow me there too, because I'll be giving real-time updates of the books that I'm reading over on my Instagram stories and posts. Tell me in the comments whether you'll be joining the bingo challenge this year or not. And if you have any doubts relating to any of the prompts or how you want to do the challenge, feel free to ask them to me. I'll try to answer them as soon as I can. And if you did enjoy watching today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And if you want to get more content from me, do subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.